have people that trying to tear down the rich. Well, if you don't have the rich, a lot of times they don't have businesses to support their workers, right? If there's no businesses, where do you go to work? I mean, these guys even blessed their owner. And the reason why is because what? If he's not successful, they're not going to be successful, right? I mean, this is the way it should be. I mean, we can't help who's rich and who's not. God has placed each and every one of us where He wants us to be. I didn't win that lottery ticket the other day, so I'm not rich. I'm where I'm supposed to be. A heartfelt greeting can energize the weary and encourage the lonely. As Christians, we are to express an attitude of appreciation all the time. And the church is a place where God's people gather together to give praise and appreciation for what He's doing in our lives. God has been good to all of us, right? Sometimes we may not think so. But no doubt He has blessed all of our lives. We should thank Him all the time. The psalm says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and with courts with praise." We sang that song a while ago, right? Give thanks to Him and praise His name, for the Lord is good, and His love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. When we assemble ourselves together, we should be filled with joy and appreciation for what God is doing, has done, and will do in the future for us. We also see that these harvesters were active people. In verses 3, 4, 5, and 7 of the New International Version of the Bible, we read that the people of Boaz's field are called harvesters. They were workers in his field. They were not idle, but they were involved in the work that needed to be done, right? They were active for their master. In much the same way, Jesus Christ tells us to be active workers in His church today, right? He has given us a job to do. We call it the Great Commission. Jesus tells us to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. In verse 5 we read, Boaz asked the foreman of the harvesters, "Whose young woman is that?" Well, he's not like most of us guys. We see a pretty looking young woman and we want to find out as much as we can about her, right? The old manly nature hasn't changed much since then, does it? No sooner had Boaz greeted his workers when his eye caught the presence of a stranger in the field. And I'm sure he's going, "Wow, who's that?" She looks pretty good. From this point on, Boaz's focus is interest on Ruth and not on the harvest. Right? Funny how that works with us guys, isn't it? It's easy to get sidetracked by a fine-looking young thing. But Boaz, noticing Ruth, reminds us of the Lord's discerning of us. God sees us as well, right? When Boaz showed up at the field, he saw and noticed Ruth. She was lost. She was not lost in the crowd. There was more than just a crowd of people in the field. There were individuals whom he was aware of. I mean, Boaz must have recognized most everybody out there working in this field, right? But all of a sudden one day he comes in there and he finds somebody else is new. I think about that when somebody comes in here new, right, in the church. Well, we immediately recognize them, and we want to find out as much about them as we possibly can, right? Hopefully we do. We want to welcome them. But this reminds us that Jesus is the shepherd of his own flock, and he knows us individually, right? I mean, we may be a crowd of people here, small crowd, okay, but he knows us individually, right? We read in John chapter 10, the man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Jesus knows you personally, right? He knows you. He knows every detail about you. The Bible tells us that even the hairs on your head are numbered, right? He knows you that intimately. A young man, before setting abroad, was presented a watch by his father. On its dial were miniatures of his loving parents. "Take this watch," said this father, "and carry it with you in all your journeys. Every time you look to see the hour, the eyes of your father and mother will look into yours. When you see our faces, remember we are praying for you. Go no place where you would not want us to see you. Do nothing you would not want us to see." Huh? God sees us all the time, right? He's always watching us. There's never a moment when he's not watching us. There's never a moment that he's not concerned about you. Boaz, noticing Ruth, also reminds us that the Lord is drawn to us. Boaz asked the woman of the harvesters, "Who is this young woman? Who is the young woman?" Now, one commentary says, on first sight, the question Boaz poses to his foreman seems odd. Instead of an expected, "Who is this young woman? To whom does this woman belong?" he assumes that Ruth, obviously a stranger who would not be independent, she must belong to someone or be engaged to some landowner like himself. But the question could also mean, whose daughter or wife is she? Or to what clan or tribe does she belong to? In any case, he knows she is out of place among his workers and in his field, but that doesn't keep him from being drawn to her. Period. Again, we marvel at the overruling providence of God in this whole book so far. The Lord led Ruth to the field of Boaz, and then Boaz to visit the field while Ruth was there.